The Diving Bell and the Butterfly, Part 3. The Sausage. After every day's session on the vertical board, a stretcher bearer wheels me from the rehabilitation room and parks me next to my bed, where I wait for the nurse's aides to swing me back between the sheets. And every day, since by now it is noon, the same stretcher bearer wishes me a resolutely cheerful bon appetit, his way of saying, see you tomorrow. And of course, to wish me a hearty appetite is about the same as saying Merry Christmas on August 15th or Good Night in broad daylight. In the last 8 months, I have swallowed nothing, save a few drops of lemon-flavored water and a half-teaspoon of yogurt, which gurgled noisily down my windpipe. The feeding test, as they grandly called this banquet, was not a success. But no call for alarm. I haven't starved. By means of a tube threaded into my stomach, 2 or 3 bags of a brownish fluid provide my daily caloric needs. For pleasure, I have to turn to the vivid memory of tastes and smells, an inexhaustible reservoir of sensations. Once I was a master at recycling leftovers. Now I cultivate the art of simmering memories. You can sit down to a meal at any hour, with no fuss or ceremony. If it's a restaurant, no need to call ahead. If I do the cooking, it is always a success. Boeuf bourguignon is tender, the boeuf angelais is translucent, the apricot pie possesses just the requisite tartness. Depending on my mood, I treat myself to a dozen snails, a plate of Alsatian sausage with sauerkraut, and a bottle of late vintage golden Gewürztraminer. Or else I savor a simple soft-boiled egg with fingers of toast and lightly salted butter. What a banquet! The yolk flows warmly over my palate and down my throat, and indigestion is never a problem. Naturally, I use the finest ingredients, the freshest vegetables, fish straight from the water, the most delicately marbled meat. Everything must be done right, just to make sure. A friend sent me the recipe for authentic homemade sausage, andouillette de Troyes, with 3 different kinds of meat braided in strips. Also, I scrupulously observe the rhythm of the seasons. Just now I am cooling my taste buds with melon and red fruit. I leave oysters and game for the autumn, should I feel like eating them, for I am becoming careful, even ascetic, in matters of diet. At the outset of my protracted fast, deprivation sent me constantly to my imaginary larder. I was gluttonous. But today I could almost be content with a good old proletarian hard sausage trussed in netting and suspended permanently from the ceiling in some corner of my head. A Nobby Lyon rosette, for example, very dry and coarsely chopped. Every slice melts a little on your tongue before you start chewing to extract all its flavor. The origin of my addiction to sausage goes back 40 years. Although still at an age for candy, I already preferred delicatessen meats, and my maternal grandfather's nurse noticed that whenever I visited the gloomy apartment on the Boulevard Raspail, I would ask her in a beguiling lisp for sausage. Skilled at indulging the desires of children and the elderly, she eventually pulled off a double coup, giving me a sausage and marrying my grandfather just before he died. My joy at receiving such a gift was in direct proportion to the annoyance the unexpected nuptials caused my family. I have only the vaguest picture of my grandfather, supine and stern-faced in the room, resembling Victor Hugo's portrait on the old 500-franc notes in use at the time. I have a much clearer memory of that sausage lying incongruously among my dinky toys and picture books. Guardian Angel. The identity badge pinned to Sandrine's white tunic says speech therapist, but it should read Guardian Angel. She is the one who set up the communication code without which I would be cut off from the world. But alas, while most of my friends have adopted the system, here at the hospital only Sandrine and a female psychologist use it. So I usually have the skimpiest arsenal of facial expressions, winks, and nods to ask people to shut the door, loosen a faucet, lower the volume on the TV, or fluff up a pillow. I do not succeed every time. As the weeks go by, This forced solitude has allowed me to acquire a certain stoicism and to realize that the hospital staff are of two kinds. The majority, who would not dream of leaving the room without first attempting to decipher my SOS messages, and the less conscientious minority, who make their getaway pretending not to notice my distress signals. Like that heartless oaf who switched off the Bordeaux Munich soccer game at halftime saying, "Good night," with a finality that left no hope of appeal. Quite apart from the practical drawbacks, the inability to communicate is somewhat wearing, which explains the gratification I feel twice daily when Sandrine knocks, pokes her small chipmunk face through the door, and at once sends all gloomy thoughts packing. The invisible and eternally imprisoning diving bell seems less oppressive. Speech therapy is an art that deserves to be more widely known. You cannot imagine the acrobatics your tongue mechanically performs in order to produce all the sounds of a language. Just now, I am struggling with the letter I, a pitiful admission for an editor-in-chief who could not even pronounce the name of his own magazine. I'm sorry, that was the letter L. He was the editor of L, French edition. On good days, between coughing fits, I muster enough energy and wind to be able to puff out one or two phonemes. On my birthday, Sandrine managed to get me to pronounce the whole alphabet, more or less, intelligibly. I could not have had a better present. It was as if those 26 letters had been wrenched from the void. My own hoarse voice seemed to emanate from a far-off country. The exhausting exercise left me feeling like a caveman discovering language for the first time. Sometimes the phone interrupts our work, and I take advantage of Sandrine's presence to be in touch with loved ones, to intercept and catch passing fragments of life the way you catch a butterfly. My daughter, Celeste, tells me of her adventures with her pony. In 5 months, she will be 9. My father tells me how hard it is to stay on his feet. He is fighting undaunted through his 93rd year. These two are the outer links of the chain of love that surrounds and protects me. I often wonder about the effect of these one-way conversations on those at the other end of the line. I am overwhelmed by them. How dearly I would love to be able to respond with something other than silence to these tender calls. I know that some of them find it unbearable. Sweet Florence refuses to speak to me unless I first breathe noisily into the receiver that Sandrine holds to my ear. "Are you there, Jando?" she asks anxiously over the air. And I have to admit that at times I do not know anymore. The photo. The last time I saw my father, I shaved him. It was the week of my stroke. He was unwell, so I had spent the night at his small apartment near the Tuileries Gardens in Paris. In the morning, after bringing him a cup of milky tea, I decided to rid him of his few days' growth of beard. The scene has remained engraved in my memory. Hunched in the red upholstered armchair where he sifts through the day's newspapers, my dad bravely endures the rasp of the razor attacking his loose skin. I wrap a big towel around his shriveled neck, daub thick lather over his face, and do my best not to irritate his skin, dotted here and there with small, dilated capillaries. From age and fatigue, his eyes have sunk deep into their sockets, and his nose looks too prominent for his emaciated features. But still flaunting the plume of hair, now snow white, that has always crowned his tall frame, he has lost none of his splendor. All around us, a lifetime's clutter has accumulated. His room calls to mind one of those old person's attics whose secrets only they can know, a confusion of old magazines, records no longer played, miscellaneous objects. Photos from all the ages of man have been stuck into the frame of a large mirror. There is Dad wearing a sailor suit and playing with a hoop before the Great War, my 8-year-old daughter in riding gear, and a black and white photo of myself on a miniature golf course. I was 11, my ears protruded, and I looked like a somewhat simple-minded schoolboy, mortifying to realize At that age, I was already a confirmed dunce. I complete my barber's duties by splashing my father with his favorite aftershave lotion. Then we say goodbye. This time, for once, he neglects to mention the letter in his writing desk where his last wishes are set out. We have not seen each other since. I cannot quit my seaside confinement. He can no longer descend the magnificent staircase of his apartment building on his 92-year-old legs. We are both locked in cases, each in his own way. Myself in my carcass, my father in his fourth-floor apartment. Now I am the one they shave every morning, and I often think of him, while a nurse's aide laboriously scrapes my cheeks with a weak old blade. I hope that I was a more attentive Figaro. Every now and then he calls, and I listen to his affectionate voice, which quivers a little in the receiver they hold to my ear. It cannot be easy for him to speak to a son who, as he well knows, will never reply. He also sent me the photo of me at the miniature golf course. At first, I did not understand why. It would have remained a mystery had someone not thought to look at the back of the print. Suddenly, in my own personal movie theater, the forgotten footage of a spring weekend began to unroll. When my parents and I had gone to take the air in a windy and not very sparkling seaside town. In his strong, angular handwriting, Dad had simply noted, Berck-sur-Mer, April 1963. Yet another coincidence. If you asked readers which of Alexandre Dumas' literary heroes they would like to be, they would pick D'Artagnan or Edmond Dantes. No one would dream of choosing Noirtier de Villefort, a somewhat sinister character in The Count of Monte Cristo. Described by Dumas as a living mummy, a man 3/4 of the way into the grave, this profoundly handicapped creature summons up not dreams, but shudders. The mute and powerless possessor of the most terrible secrets, he spends his life slumped in a wheelchair, able to communicate only by blinking his eye. 1 blink yes, 2 blinks no. In fact, dear Grandpa Noirtier, as his granddaughter affectionately calls him, is literature's first, and so far only, case of locked-in syndrome. As soon as my mind was clear of the thick fog with which my stroke had shrouded it, I began to think a lot about Grandpa Noirtier. I had just reread The Count of Monte Cristo, and now here I was, back in the heart of the book, and in the worst of circumstances. Ironic? But that rereading had not been purely by chance. I had been toying with the idea of writing a modern, doubtless iconoclastic, version of the Dumas novel. Vengeance, of course, remained the driving force of the action, but the plot took place in our era, and Monte Cristo was a woman. So I did not have time to commit this crime of lèse majesté. As a punishment, I would have preferred to be transformed into Monsieur Danglars, Franz d'Épinay, the Abbé Faria, or at the very least, to copy out 1,000 times, I must not tamper with masterpieces. But the gods of literature and neurology decided otherwise. Some evenings I have the impression that Grandpa Noirtier patrols our corridors in a century-old wheelchair, sadly in need of a drop of oil. To foil the decrees of fate, I am now planning a vast saga in which the key witness is not a paralytic, but a runner. You never know, perhaps it will work. End of part 3.